If you thought Isuzu pickups were a bit rough and ready, it's probably about time you gave the D-Max a try. Once, this brand was really one reserved for the requirements of pure commercial operators. In this updated form though, the RG Series D-Max will also suit private buyers looking for an all-terrain utility vehicle that can play the lifestyle card, thanks to sharper looks and a smarter cabin. But it's still as tough as ever, which is why so many professionals choose this Isuzu. In a marketplace full of pretenders, it's that rarest of things, the genuine article.
Once upon a time, almost every mainstream brand made a pickup. These days though, what our US and Australian neighbours call trucks or utes are made only by brands really serious about this sector. And here's one of them, Isuzu, who in 2021 brought us the second generation RG series version of their contender in this segment, the D-Max. But the D-Max model line has never stood still, and 2 years on it was lightly updated to create the facelifted version of that design that we're going to try here. Isuzu's been selling pickups here since the original TF models launched back in 1988, which was followed in 2002 by an RA series model badged in the UK as Rodeo, which was updated with common rail engine tech in 2004. The replacement RT series design was launched in 2012, at which point this model line gained the D-Max badging that's carried through here. That RT version was treated to an engine transplant and facelift in 2017, and as we said earlier, eventually succeeded 4 years later on our shores by this RG series model, developed in collaboration with Mazda and sold in other countries with a Colorado badge by Chevrolet and Holden. It went on sale in the facelifted form we look at here in summer 2023. Now you're up to date. It competes in a UK pickup market that looks very different these days. Fiat, Mercedes, Mitsubishi and Nissan all having deserted the segment in recent years as ever more stringent EU emissions regulations have made it more and more difficult for pickups to be a part of a mainstream branded manufacturer's model lineup. But Isuzu isn't a mainstream brand, and the company's very happy that opposition to this D-Max is now restricted to just 4 contenders: Toyota's Hilux and SsangYong's Musso, plus the market leader Ford's Ranger and its clone Volkswagen's Amarok. Isuzu, the name translates as 5 bells in English, is here to stay in the segment against that quartet. It has no issues with a Euro legislation knock-on into its car range because these days it only makes trucks and vans. But it is interested in making this RG Series D-Max more car-like. Hence the thinking behind this facelift with its smarter cabin upholstery. The changes made as part of this update are minor, but might just be enough to encourage a customer looking for a tougher, more affordable alternative to a Ranger or a Hilux to take this D-Max more seriously. Should you do just that if you're shopping in this segment? The industry's most comprehensive road test film, Car and Driving's Review, will give you the answers. This is how pickups used to be, all white clean utility and no nonsense solidity. In our more cultured, electrified era, it's almost like a throwback, and one day it'll have to change. But when it does, you sense that Isuzu will be the last ones to say goodbye to the crude, leaf-sprung workaday pickup as we once knew it. That's certainly what you get here. You sit high, press the starter button, and watch as the instrument panel ahead of you briefly lights up like a Christmas tree with all the various safety systems that these days a D-Max now has. There's even an infographic in the centre of the cluster that gives the vehicle a once-over before it's ready to go. It all feels quite modern, but the old-school background to this is the same rumbly 1.9-litre diesel this model line's had since 2017. Can it still cut the mustard amongst pickups today? Well, it depends on what your driving priorities are. If all a vehicle of this kind ever had to do was to cope with a quarry, tow with a heavy trailer, or duke it out in the jungle, the D-Max would already be a better established choice in the UK pickup sector. And the RG series model, the improved version of which we're trying here, has got even better when extreme capability is called for, something we'll brief you on shortly. The problem for this Isuzu model line has always come when owners needed to tackle what for previous D-Maxes represented a far more challenging area of terrain, tarmac territory. Off-road orientation didn't help this model here, and nor since 2017 has provision beneath the bonnet of the smallest, least tractable diesel engine in the class. With this background in mind, it becomes obvious why, prior to 2021, only farmers, commercial users and those attracted by value-based asking prices usually tended to choose the D-Max. The introduction of this current RG series design, though, has changed things a little. Enough, we think, for a potential pickup customer to take a second look and give this likeable Isuzu a chance. In this section, we'll be explaining why. We've mentioned the 1.9 litre engine. Let's start with that. It only comes in one form in this pickup, and it's something of an elephant in the room here. Isuzu hardly mentions it in its literature. Its system output, 164 PS, isn't necessarily an issue. You'll read lots of reports about rival Ranger, Amarok and Hilux models these days offering over 200 PS, but those are the really expensive variants. A comparable mainstream 2-litre Ranger or Amarok actually puts out 170 PS, while a mainstream 2.4-litre D4D Toyota Hilux actually has less power than this D-Max, 152 PS. But what's most important is that all these rival engines embarrass this D-Max model's relatively paltry 360 Nm of pulling power. The 2.4-litre Hilux has 400 Nm, while it's 420 Nm for 170 PS versions of the Amarok and the Ranger. You'll feel that too in a manual gearbox version of this Isuzu, with the extra shift changes that'll be necessary when heavily laden, especially on uphill inclines. But Isuzu says that all of this is worth it, and here's why. First, this smaller engine still pretty much matches its rivals in terms of the way it keeps up with the traffic flow, even if a bit more cog swapping is necessary to do it. Acceleration levels are pretty much par for the sector, with 62 miles an hour from rest taking 12.7 seconds with a manual gearbox and 13 seconds with this also. The same goes for the 112 mile an hour top speed, limited by the usual garden shed style aerodynamics common to the pickup segment. More importantly, the 3.5-ton towing capability on offer also matches best in class, although unlike a rival SsangYong Musso, this D-Max can't tow to this kind of capacity when there's also a ton of weight in the load bay. That shouldn't be too much of an issue for most potential owners, who will be pleased to find that despite the age of this engine, it's still class competitively efficient. And because it's a lighter unit, it allows this vehicle's total curb weight at 2,030 kilograms to be much lower than all its rivals. That's actually really significant, because any pickup weighing more than 2,040 kilos, as all this D-Max rivals do, is classified as a goods vehicle and must be driven at 10 miles an hour below the usual speed limit on single and dual carriageways. Only with this Isuzu do normal passenger car speed limits apply, which creates the unusual situation where a 164 PS D-Max will often be quicker on some point-to-point journeys than far pricier 205 PS versions of the Ranger or the Amarok. That'd be very much a case of the tortoise overtaking the hare, but at least with this RG series D-Max model, the tortoise is a bit more suited to the tarmac territory than was the case with the crude old pre-2021 era RT model. Lots of effort went into this rejuvenated D-Max to try and change that. The front control arms were raised for a reduction in roll, increased tyre contact with the tarmac, and an improvement in stability. Plus, Isuzu updated the rear suspension leaf spring design, changed the shock absorber mounting points, and added rubber bushings between the chassis frame and the body to better absorb vibrations. If you've driven a D-Max from the last decade, you'll quickly notice that all of this delivers a big improvement on the crude old driving experience served up previously. This pickup is certainly now more adept at dealing with porous surfaces, though not to the point where this Isuzu can get as close as a Ranger or a Hilux do in offering a more SUV-like drive demeanour. Still, no pickup can properly replicate the car-like drive dynamics of an SUV, and in this one there remains plenty of body roll at speed through tighter turns as you slide around on the flat-bottomed seats, reupholstered as part of the package of facelift updates we're trying here. On the plus side though, thanks to the engineering changes that were made in 2021 as part of this RG series redesign, there's certainly now a lot less back-end floatiness when the load bay's empty, and with a bit of weight in the back, it's possible at times to forget you're in a pickup, until you lurch into a corner or clump over a speed hump. As before, bumping and bouncing around over uneven surfaces is worse in the alternative extended cab and single cab body styles. As part of the updates that were made at this RG series model's original introduction, the transmissions were looked at as well. The 6-speed manual still has a bit of a long throw, but it's slicker to use than Isuzu stick shifts used to be, and has gained a lift-up collar on the stick for reverse so that you don't select that by mistake. D-Max regulars not yet familiar with this current model will also find the automatic gearbox we have here to be a more responsive thing too, thanks to the fact that for this generation design, Isuzu adopted the same Aisin-made 6-speeder that Toyota uses on the Hilux. This transmission's 25% quicker than the old RT D-Max model's auto at shifting gears, although it's still nothing like as sophisticated as the auto you get in a rival Ford Ranger or Volkswagen Amarok, where you've 10 ratios to switch between. With this RG model, Isuzu also made the front disc brakes and rear drum brakes larger to reduce brake fade and improve brake feel. That reduces braking noise too as part of refinement updates that made this truck noticeably quieter at cruising speeds. Though tyre and wind roar on the highway are still higher than in a Hilux, and this Isuzu is still pretty rumbly around town. Another key change with this generation D-Max lies with the fact that electric power steering has replaced the old hydraulic setup, which has made response more direct. And allow for this to be a speed-sensitive system, so at low speeds it's easier to turn this D-Max. Plus there's a decent, for a pickup, 12.5 metre curb-to-curb turning circle too. The steering weighting gradually increases as you go faster and gives you reasonable confidence at speed through the corners, where we've also noticed that the system transfers fewer road shocks from bumpy surfaces back to your hands than you might expect from a pickup. It's not quite as good on the highway, where there's a bit of a dead spot in the straight ahead position. Another advantage to having electrical steering is that it's allowed the brand to incorporate the class-leading level of camera safety kit we referenced earlier. As a result, this pickup can keep itself in lane and steer against you if you try and pull out dangerously. Plus, it can brake itself to avoid a collision, alert you to oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a space, offer you adaptive cruise control, brake itself in parking manoeuvres if you're about to hit something, and automatically adjust its speed to suit prevailing limits as you drive. What long-time D-Max owners will recognise though is the old model's off-road prowess, further improved upon with this RG series model. So as promised earlier, let's finish by briefing you on that. Assuming you avoid the very cheapest single cab model in the range, all D-Max models come with four-wheel drive, As usual, the normal pickup shift on the fly system, which allows you to swap between rear-driven 2H and 4x4 4H settings at up to 65 miles an hour using this centre stack dial. For wet or icy tarmac or light off-piste work, the 4H high-range all-wheel drive option is really useful. You can monitor this via a selectable instrument cluster screen display, and marvel, as this actually quite advanced four-wheel drive setup activates more quickly than any other system in the sector, calling the front drive shafts into action in just 0.69 of a second. Once that's happened, the D-Max feels notably more sure-footed on the slippery stuff. Of course, once in a while you'll need to do more, occasions on which you'll be further twisting and pressing this dial to engage the full low-range 4L four-wheel drive mode, something that can only happen when the vehicle's virtually stopped. In that 4L setting, you really do get an incredibly accomplished off-roader, aided by a first gear ratio that's an ideal crawler gear over rough terrain, on which you'll appreciate ground clearance that up to 235mm is a little higher than you get with many other rival pickups. It's at this point that a D-Max driver familiar with using the previous RT generation model off the beaten track might begin to notice the improvements made to enhance the 4x4 prowess of this one. The tough ladder chassis has been strengthened thanks to larger rails, and an extra panel has been added to provide more extensive underbody protection. But that's just the start. The re-engineered suspension setup we mentioned earlier allows greater axle articulation to better deal with off-road obstructions. Plus, the four-wheel drive system engages much more quickly than it used to on older D-Maxes, and there's standard fit hill descent control and hill start assist. Neither of those last two features, by the way, work when you activate the lockable rear differential, also standard, provided you avoid the entry utility level of spec, which works at up to 19 miles an hour and automatically disengages after that. Having a lockable diff at the back keeps the left and right wheels on the rear axle turning at the same speed over really gnarly terrain, and helps you to extricate this Isuzu should you come close to getting it stuck. You're less likely to be defeated by deep standing water in this current D-Max. The old RT series model's unimpressive 600mm wading depth was increased by 200mm to 800mm with this RG design. That's the same as a Ford Ranger or Volkswagen Amarok, but 100mm more than a Hilux. In extremis, you'll also benefit from very useful approach and departure angles, respectively 31 and up to 24 degrees. There's also a 22-degree ramp angle and a maximum traversing angle of 49 degrees. And in deep mud, well, a clever brake traction control system helps here no end. If you've only one front wheel with meaningful traction, this setup will figure out that it needs to send drive to that wheel and will crawl you out of trouble. You can also disengage the system for those moments when you want to deliberately generate wheel spin to cut through a slippery top surface in order to gain traction. Styling hasn't been a priority for Isuzu pickups in the past that offered rugged, spherical shapes, big wheels, lots of chrome, and not much else. But that approach changed back in 2021 with the more arresting cage fighter style aesthetics of this RG series design, enough to deliver quite an overtaking statement and a far more powerful pavement presence, embellished here with a few subtle updates as part of this facelift. All the changes have taken place here at the front, with tweaks to the two-tier front grille. The Isuzu name now sits above the top bar rather than being embedded within it, and the lower bar has lost the acute angles which previously characterised its lower corners. The black grille slats below have also been revised. As before, this appendage is flanked by distinctive angled headlights, which feature more sophisticated bi-LED beams on plusher models, with integrated LED daytime running lights and LED fog lamps further down. Though most customers will want this double cab body style, which is conditional for customers wanting the top V-Cross Adventure range model, Isuzu is also continuing to offer an extended cab variant alongside it in the more affordable mid-level all-purpose range. Think back to front rear doors and occasional rear seats. In the base business range, that extended cab variant features along with the traditional single cab body shape with its much longer cargo bay. As before, side steps and 18-inch alloy wheels feature on most models, though the rims have been redesigned for the plusher all-purpose and adventure versions, getting a two-tone finish on this mid-range DL40 variant and are painted dark grey on the top V-Cross derivative. Move to the back and there are silvered LED tail lamps and a tailgate with a built-in spoiler moulded into the top section. Under the skin, this RG series design took a big step forward from its predecessor at launch back in 2021, shedding about 80 kilos of weight thanks to a prop shaft fashioned from aluminium and higher tensile steel plates, which together have enhanced rigidity by 20%. Time to take a seat behind the wheel. A well-positioned step and a grab handle ease entry into the cab. And once you're inside, if you happen to have tried the original version of this RG Series D-Max, you'll immediately notice this updated model's redesigned leather upholstery with its smart horizontal layering. That's assuming you've opted for one of the two top variants, either the DL40 we're trying here or the plushest V-Cross derivative. The more affordable DL20 version also gets revised upholstery, more premium woven fabric, part of a refreshed design. Otherwise, the cabin's just as it was at this model's original launch back in 2021. Very much Mazda influence, with a layered dashboard featuring smart contrast between the hard and soft materials used. If you can avoid the two least expensive variants, a big infotainment screen features at the top of the centre stack, flanked by angled vents. All of this creates a starting point for much more credible levels of luxurious embellishment than Isuzu pickups have ever offered in the past. We've previously driven plenty of leather-lined Rodeo and D-Max variants, but they all felt like pickup models with ideas above their humble station in life. Here, though, the ambience really isn't that far off what you get in a much pricier mid-level Ranger or Hilux. If you're not too fussed about the bumpy drive dynamics, you might even be happy to transfer into this Isuzu out of a mid-sized SUV, thanks to touches like the white stitching found on the soft, grainy dash top, and on door cards also featuring piano black finishing. Even on this mid-level DL40 model, the seats are heated with standard lumbar support, and the driver's chair is 8-way power adjustable. Plus, this big overhead lighting console is also smart. So is this silver-trimmed 3-spoke steering wheel, which, unlike with D-Maxes from the last decade, is adjustable for both reach and rake, though the reach adjustability could be greater. Through it, you view the 4.2-inch display that Isuzu has inserted between these two white delineated analog dials. This screen sees temperature and fuel gauges with surrounding ambient temperature, time, gear change and speed limit readouts. Plus a central area, which you can customise using steering wheel buttons to select trip computer data, plus readouts for fuel, efficiency, range and 4WD system status. Earlier we mentioned this centre stack multimedia touchscreen. It features in 7-inch form with this DL40 variant in the all-purpose range, mated to a 6-speaker DAB audio system. And in 9-inch guise with the pricier V-Cross Adventure range derivative, where there's an 8-speaker audio setup. This monitor isn't as sophisticated as those provided in a Ranger or a Hilux. Rather annoyingly, the home screen seems to be full of icons you can't select. But everything you really need is here, including Bluetooth. We found the reception a little patchy, plus access to Wi-Fi and the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring features that'll allow you to connect it into navigational apps. All-round visibility isn't bad for a pickup, thanks to the commanding seating position, relatively slim side pillars, and sizable door mirrors. Rear parking sensors are standard from DL20 mid-range trim upwards, And the plusher DL40 and V-Cross models get front sensors as well. All the buttons and switches have a robust feel and could be used with a gloved hand. And if you really don't care much about comforts in your pickup, a proper hose-out plastic floored interior can be had with the utility range variants. As for practicalities across the D-Max lineup, well, there's a deep lidded box between the seats with twin cup holders just in front. And this stowage area at the base of the centre stack has a 12-volt port and a USB socket just above. Plus, there are extra stowage compartments in the centre of the dash top and by the driver's right knee. Much seems to be promised by this twin glove box arrangement too, but the lower part isn't as big as it looks and is mainly taken up by the manual. And on plusher variants, you'll find the upper section partly taken up by media equipment. The door bins are small, but do have big bottle holders. There are ticket clips on the sun visors and a strap for paperwork on the outside of the driver's sun visor. There are also pull-out drawers with integrated cup holders at either end of the dash, the signature D-Max touch. And you get an overhead compartment for your sunglasses. Right, what's it like for rear passengers in this double cab model? Well, again, there are huge grab handles by the doors to help you haul yourself in. DL40 and V-Cross variants get these redesigned and very substantial side steps too, which you'll need because, like most pickups, the floor height is rather high. Once inside, there's slightly more passenger comfort than is provided by some rival models, thanks to this RG series model's relatively generous wheelbase length, which has been used to the benefit of rear-seated folk. As a result, there's a little more legroom than you might expect and decent room for head and shoulders. It's also noticeable that the seat's backrest is a little less vertically inclined than with some rivals, which gives noticeably greater comfort on longer journeys. A trio of 3-point belts and headrests are provided, but in truth, 3 adults would be a little squashed here on lengthier trips despite the relatively low central transmission tunnel. But then that's also the case with every other double cab contender in this segment. All but the utility variants get these twin central vents, an armrest with twin cup holders, and on the V-Cross variant, even twin ceiling speakers. The doors have huge bottle holders, there are coat hooks in the grab handles, there are seat back pockets, and there's a bag hook for your Friday night takeaway on the front passenger seat back. It can take up to 4 kilograms, so there's no problem if you're feeling really hungry. One nice touch is the way that twin storage areas under this 60-40 split rear seat base enable you to more flexibly use this rear passenger space for packages should you so wish. You lift this little flap on each side. Plus, you can also pull down the rear seat backrest, preventing the upholstery from getting grubby when you're carrying pets or packages. Flattening this uncovers the vehicle jack and toolkit. The D-Max has a reputation as one of the most affordable pickups on the market, which continues here. Now, as usual, with this kind of truck, the majority of sales will be of this double cab body style, with a large proportion of those being of the plusher variants that sit at the upper end of the lineup's pricing span. From the launch of this updated version of the RG series D-Max model, excluding VAT, which businesses will of course be able to claim back, that costing structure was pitched in the £24,000 to £36,000 range at the time of this film in autumn 2023. As before, the lineup is divided into 3 segments. You'll know which one is right for you. If all you want is an inexpensive, no-frills pickup for commercial or farming duties, then you'll be choosing from the entry-level business range of utility-trimmed models, which Isuzu expects to account for around 25% of sales. This is the only part of the lineup offering a 2-wheel drive option and the single cab body style. For 2-wheel drive, you have to have that single cab, which is offered with 4-wheel drive for £2,000 more. which then brings you to the near £27,000 excluding VAT starting point in the lineup for most customers, which gets you the extended cab body shape that has occasional rear seats, or you can have this double cab body shape for around £750 more. Isuzu dubs this mid-level part of the lineup its all-purpose range, which the brand expects to account for around 45% of sales. Customers are offered a choice of either the DL20 model or this DL40 variant, the letters standing for differential lock, an off-road orientated feature added to the all four-wheel drive portfolio of models available at this level. With DL20 trim, you get the option of the extended cab body shape at a price point of around £29,000 excluding VAT, but otherwise the all-purpose models all feature the double cab body shape, with prices pitched from launch at just under £30,000 for the DL20 or from just under £33,000 for this plusher DL40. Either way, you'll be offered the option of automatic transmission for around £1,500 more. At the top of the mainstream lineup is the lifestyle-orientated adventure range, where the plushest V-Cross model sits, a name borrowed from a previous D-Max special edition, and a variant which will account for 30% of D-Max sales. As we filmed, the manual model was pitched at just over £34,000, but most will want to find the extra £1,500 for the automatic variant we have here. Beyond that, there's only the specialist Arctic Trucks AT35 variant, which has the same engine but costs a lot more money, as we filmed around £49,000 for a manual model or around £50,500 for the auto version, both ex-VAT prices. For that, you get special 35-inch tyres, unique 17-inch by 10-inch wheels in flared arches, special side steps and roof rails, and raised Bilstein suspension. But the AT35 isn't our focus here. We've covered it in a separate film. Returning to the mainstream D-Max models, you'll want to know how class competitive these figures are against the four rivals that by the second half of 2023, and at the time of this test, were the only other pickup models confirmed for continuing sale in our market going forward. The only other combustion ones anyway. Chinese maker Maxus offers a fully electric pickup model, the T90 EV, but that's very restricted in terms of payload and towing capacity, and it has a £50,000 price tag. So our comparisons here will be against rival combustion-powered models. And we'll base all of those comparisons on the double cab body style, since that's what most customers will want, pitching variants of comparable spec and trim together as much as we can. The cheapest alternative option to a D-Max is the SsangYong Musso, which at the time of this test was priced from just under £26,000 excluding VAT in base EX manual form. The Musso offers significantly more power at 202 PS than this D-Max, but in most of its guises is hobbled by a restricted 1300mm load bay length that's by far the shortest in the class. The D-Max's load bay length, for instance, is 1495mm. The only long wheelbase Musso model is the top-spec Saracen Plus Auto version that has a 1600mm load bay length, which cost at the time of this test around £35,000 excluding VAT. Yes, that's around the same as a top-spec D-Max V-Cross Auto. But the SsangYong's 2.2-litre diesel is far less efficient, so a Musso owner would have to budget for higher running costs. All of which explains why almost all pickup customers in this segment who don't choose this D-Max will, going forward, probably be opting for the lower-powered versions of either a Ford Ranger or a Toyota Hilux. It's difficult to match this D-Max directly to those models because specs and trim levels vary. But if we use this typical DL40 double cab auto model as an example, priced as we told you at just over £34,000, excluding VAT, the comparably priced Hilux Icon Auto model will give you less power at 152 PS and a lot less equipment. The equivalent Ford Ranger is more difficult to match to what we have here because, in comparable 170 PS diesel form, it can't be had as an automatic. For that, you'd need that Ford with a 205 PS diesel that at the time of filming required a minimum £35,000 budget. That Ford model's clone, the Volkswagen Amarok, can, like a Ranger, be had in a manual gearbox, double cab, base spec 170 PS form that'd be priced quite similarly to the DL40 spec D-Max we're trying here. But again, if you wanted an auto gearbox, you'd have to push your excluding VAT spend to over £35,000. Whatever version of this Isuzu you happen to be looking at, the bottom line is that it probably won't save you a huge amount over an equivalent Ranger or Hilux. But across the D-Max range, you'll probably get significantly more equipment for your cash. If, having considered all that, you conclude that it is this Isuzu that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous the Japanese manufacturer has been with the standard spec. So let's take a look at that now. Obviously, with the entry-level business range of utility spec models, you only get the basics. So that does include a very complete package of camera safety equipment, which we'll brief you on shortly. With vinyl floored utility spec, the headlamps get auto activation and high beam assist. Plus, there's also auto wipers, cruise control, manual air conditioning, a 6-way adjustable driver's seat with lumbar support, a 2-speaker DAB radio with a CD player, and an insurance-approved immobiliser, plus an alarm. If you're able to stretch to a model in the mid-level all-purpose range, then quite a lot more comes included, most notably a rear differential lock for greater off-road traction. These models gain body-coloured finishing for the bumpers and door mirrors, plus silver trim for the door handles. DL20 spec is your starting point here, designated by a medium grey coloured front grille and offering a kit level including 18-inch alloy wheels, front fog lights, rear parking sensors and power folding heated door mirrors. Inside with DL20 spec, the cabin gets carpeting, heated front seats, rear heating ducts, 2 extra audio system speakers and for the double cab, a rear central armrest and a rear USB port. Opt for a plusher DL40 spec model like this one, and your D-Max will gain a dark grey and chrome finish for the front grille, the door mirrors and the door handles. Get bi-LED headlamps with LED daytime running lights, LED front fog lights, LED rear lights, front parking sensors, 2-tone side steps and a keyless entry and start system. Inside at DL40 level, the most notable feature is a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. Plus, you get now smarter leather upholstery, 8-way electric driver seat adjustment, dual zone climate control, a reversing camera, a 6-speaker audio system, a leather-stitched steering wheel and a rear ventilation panel. At the top of the range lies the V-Cross model, recognisable by the so-called very dark grey finish applied to the front grille, the door mirrors, the door handles, the side steps and the alloy wheels. Here, of course, you get the real niceties, including a larger 9-inch touchscreen infotainment system linked to an 8-speaker audio setup and a CD player. Remember those? There's automatic headlamp levelling, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, illuminated vanity mirrors in the sun visors and V-Cross carpet mats. We mentioned safety provision earlier on, so let's focus on that now. Now, from its original launch, this RG Series D-Max set a fresh standard for safety in its class. Back in 2021, it was the only pickup that Euro NCAP had ever given a 5-star rating to, with a crash test rating that included a maximum score for child occupant protection in front and lateral collisions. It also gained maximum points as part of the test for rescue and extraction, thanks to the inclusion of an e-call system which alerts the emergency services to your exact location should the airbags go off. An SOS button is provided for emergency use. And we mentioned airbags. Now, every model gets at least 7 of them, a tally which raises to 8 on the double cab models, because with this body style, you gain a clever centre airbag as well. Euro NCAP would also have taken into account that across the lineup, there's a very wide range of advanced driver assist systems, all controlled by this pair of cameras you can see there at the top of the windscreen. They function as the eyes of this pickup, judging distances and spotting hazards more quickly and more accurately than a conventional radar system could. This camera setup uses two lenses which produce two readings, which the software compares, then gauges your likely stopping distance, operating in much the same way as the human eye. Isuzu claims this camera system can identify objects from 120 metres away. And because these cameras are situated higher up in the vehicle than radar sensors would be, they're less likely to suffer from malfunctioning issues when the whole vehicle is coated with dirt. Probably the most important camera safety feature is Isuzu's forward collision warning autonomous braking setup, which springs into action with a row of flashing red lights if your D-Max thinks you're about to hit something. You actually get quite an early warning, which should give you time to take evasive action before the autonomous braking kicks in. This particular setup can detect pedestrians, cyclists and other vehicles. Also standard is a lane departure warning and prevention setup, which alerts you if you're drifting out of lane. There's also a multi-collision brake system that automatically applies the brakes if you hit something, and the airbags are deployed, thus reducing the chances of the vehicle going on to hit something else. Additionally, all D-Max models get a traffic sign recognition system which pictures speed signs as you pass, and on most models functions as part of an intelligent speed limiter. When set, this automatically adjusts the speed based on camera feedback, though it's not infallible. Still, it should give you a pretty good chance of preserving your licence in built-up areas. If the D-Max model you've chosen has the double cab body style, you'll also get a rear radar safety system, a real rarity in this segment. At the time of this test, in late 2023, the only pickup we'd ever seen with this tech was a very top-spec Mitsubishi L200 Barbarian X. With this generation D-Max, Isuzu's democratised this technology, which is important because with rear radar, you're protected that much more. There is, for instance, an emergency lane keeping system made possible by the incorporation of electric power steering into this RG series model, which on the highway will actively prevent you from steering into another vehicle if you try to change lanes without looking. There's also a blind spot monitor, which alerts you with a warning light flashing in the door mirror should you be about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle. If you ignore the warning light, that emergency lane keeping system will adjust the steering to prevent the lane change. The same rear radars also work as part of a rear cross traffic alert feature, which warns you of oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a space. As referenced earlier on, one of the advantages of choosing this double cab body style is that it gives you the option of ordering automatic transmission. And with that, you get three further drive safety features. Adaptive cruise control automatically maintains your distance to the vehicle in front on the highway. Lane keeping assist more proactively controls the steering to keep you in lane at speed. And there's what Isuzu calls AT pedal misapplication mitigation, which is designed to prevent accidents caused by the driver stamping on the accelerator instead of the brake. AT pedal misapplication mitigation suppresses engine torque and issues a visual and audible warning if the driver suddenly accelerates in front of an object. It works at under 5 miles an hour when the obstacle is within 4 metres of the vehicle, helping you to avoid incidents at parking speeds. For instance, if your D-Max is parked up and then you accidentally select drive instead of reverse. As you'd expect, there's ESC, or electronic stability control, an ABS anti-lock brakes with a brake assist system for emergency stops, and EBD, or electronic brake force distribution. There's traction control, a hill start assist set up to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and hill descent control to ease you down slippery slopes. Plus trailer sway control to stop trailer snaking when you're hitched up at speed. It's also worth pointing out that the safety credentials of this RG series model have been enhanced by the strength and rigidity of its durable ladder chassis. Compared to the old RT series design, this has been enhanced with an extra cross member and larger chassis rails, which are up to 34% wider and 14% higher in sections, and this improves safety in side impacts. Let's finish with a look at options across the range. You can create your own very bespoke kind of D-Max by adding a few well-chosen extras. So let's take a look at a few of the alternatives. Unfortunately, you can't order a centre dash touchscreen monitor in a utility or DL20 spec D-Max, but Isuzu UK can suggest some aftermarket solutions that will fill the space almost equally well. Across the range, there are the normal dealer fit accessories, including, of course, the kind of hard top we have here, an XST design. Plus, of course, you can order load covers, roof rails and tow bars that many customers will want. Bear in mind that you're almost certainly going to need to pay your dealer more for your choice of paint colour. The only standard one is solid splash white. Beyond that, there are a range of metallic and mica finishes costing an extra £500. Here we have mica onyx black. Valencia orange metallic has been a popular shade since this RG series model was launched. And there are two new shades added as part of this facelift update: Biarritz blue metallic and pearlescent dolomite white. There's also an optional Huntsman pack which provides extra bed space for dog boxes and lockable storage space for firearms. If you need something a bit more bespoke for your business, Isuzu offers a fleet services department with a dedicated team who can look at what your business needs, then cover homologation, sourcing, suppliers and technical development. Any parts required go through a rigorous sign-up process and are fitted at an Isuzu specialist fleet conversion centre based in Kent, then delivered to your door. Right, let's take a look at the load bay area. Now, if you've used a D-Max in the past, the first thing you'll notice, if your experience with a D-Max dates back to the old pre-2021 RT series model, is that Isuzu's added a damper to the tailgate so it doesn't fall open as soon as you release it. The thing is still pretty heavy to lift though. A big step's been moulded into the bumper so that reaching in is a little easier, and though Isuzu added 30mm of extra depth to this cargo bay as part of this RG series redesign, the resulting 465mm depth figure is still comfortably the least accommodating in the class. The 1495mm load bay length of this double cab model is also bettered by the Toyota Hilux at 1525, the long wheelbase SsangYong Musso at 1600 and the Ford Ranger at 1613mm. Obviously, you'll gain more load bay length with the alternative to D-Max body shapes. The extended cab offers 1805mm and the single cab has 2315. As with this Isuzu's four key segment rivals, there's enough load bay width, 1530mm, to take a standard UK-sized pallet lengthways between the wheel arch intrusions. And this area meets the usual pickup class qualification that it should be able to take over a tonne of weight. With this double cab auto model, the figure is up to 1070 kilograms. You'll be able to take a fraction more if you choose a manual gearbox or an extended cab model. And the figure for the single cab is up at 1205 kilograms. In our driving experience section, we briefed you on this D-Max's class competitive 3.5-tonne brake towing capacity, but noted the reduction that would be necessary to that figure were the load bay to be fully weighted up, an issue also with the Ranger and the Hilux. There are 4 tie-down points on the cargo sidewalls and the bulkhead to stop loads from moving around, which is just as well as this vehicle doesn't offer a ladder rack behind the cab to protect the driver if all else fails and something really heavy slides forward. And to embellish things, well, as you'd expect, you can add on a full hard top, as we have here, if you want it, or perhaps you just need some sort of load bay cover. All of it's available through your dealer, who can also arrange more specific business use related conversions through Isuzu's Fleet Services department. Whatever you need this D-Max to do, they'll seek to find a way for it to be able to do it. So, what about the running costs? Well, let's have a look at those. If you're not a seasoned pickup owner, but you are attracted to this kind of vehicle, perhaps out of a large SUV, then it'll probably be because of HMRC tax breaks. The government continues to allow all vehicles with a payload of over a tonne to be treated as commercial vehicles, or CVs. And that means owners get more generous write-down allowances and very favourable fixed-rate benefit-in-kind tax assessment, which can be worth several £1,000s a year in comparison to a car. Plus, VAT-related companies can reclaim purchase price VAT. And there's a flat rate of vehicle excise duty, which again will save you plenty over what you pay for a comparable SUV. To these attributes, you might hope that this D-Max would offer the most efficient WLTP-rated running costs in the class, courtesy of its downsized 1.9-litre diesel power plant and a considerably lighter curb weight than you'll find with rivals. Well, it does much better than a SsangYong Musso, but with that model using an ancient old 2.2-litre EXDI220 unit, to be frank, this isn't saying very much. Drill down into the detail, and you'll find that the actual figures you get with this Isuzu pretty much replicate those of a 2.4-litre Toyota Hilux and are slightly behind those of a Ford Ranger in 2-litre EcoBlue 170 PS form. To be specific, this double-cab D-Max Auto manages up to 30.7 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 241 grams per kilometre of CO2. Readings you can improve to 33.6 mpg and 220 grams per kilometre with the manual gearbox. You'll probably have preconceptions about the Isuzu D-Max, possibly positive ones if you're a farmer or commercial user who needs something tough, rough and ready and have tried a D-Max in the past. By and large, though, older versions of this Isuzu have never had the polish, primarily in ritzy looks, cabin design and tarmac drive quality, to appeal to the broader spectrum of the pickup market. When we first tried this rejuvenated RG series design back in 2021, though, we could see that things were beginning to change. All it needed was a few extra cabin embellishments to get on terms with its two key segment rivals, Ford's Ranger and Toyota's Hilux, both of which are significantly pricier. Now that it's got that interior update, along with a minor visual wash and brush up outside, you might well feel it's worth another look if you're browsing in this segment. True, it's still not quite as polished inside as the market leaders, but put against that the fact that this D-Max is better off-road than a Ranger and can ford deeper water than a Hilux. It's not quite as cheap as the other segment contender, SsangYong's Musso, but it's a much higher quality product that looks very good value over the prices Ford and Toyota want to charge when you take equipment levels into account. Where you might have cause for concern here, though, is with the single engine offering available, smaller in capacity and lesser in torque than rival power plants, a failing you'll feel more acutely if you order your D-Max with a manual gearbox. But is that such an issue? This Isuzu still has the same 3.5-tonne towing capacity as its rivals, and even though it's got less power, it might even be quicker point to point because, unlike its key competitors, it's light enough to be driven at passenger car speed limits. For those who want a pickup that most closely resembles an SUV, these arguments may not be sufficient to compensate for a clunkier road-going feel than you get in a Ranger or a Hilux. Everyone else shopping in this segment, though, needs to take a fresh look at this Isuzu. Smart, strong and safe, it loves workloads. If that's exactly what you want from a pickup, then you'll find it here.